Hey guys, it's Mrs. Beaulieu, and Blackboard is not working today. It is the 24th of February, and we are starting a new unit. I want to especially welcome Cohort 3, and just let you know that from now on you'll be invited to our regular classes with the rest of the class. And I love them, and they are fantastic, and I miss them this morning, and I think that you will really enjoy coming to classes. So today you're supposed to read this Rousseau and Talleyrand document, and I'm sure that you can work through that, but I am going to read it to you and explain some things that you might want to take note of, because you do have a quiz that's due. I think it's due tomorrow, but anyhow, tomorrow I'm going to be at ACT testing, so we will not have a class connect. And I believe that my site's pretty small, so I'm planning on being here Wednesday and Thursday. We shall see what Blackboard is doing, so just watch the announcements, okay? If this happens again on Thursday, I'll do the same thing today and explain the Wollstonecraft materials for you, okay? And there is an extra credit this week, so if you are interested in that, make sure that you find it inside your course. So today the goal was look at women's rights specifically in the 1970s. We're going to learn about Rousseau and Talleyrand. Now, if you need to catch up, I have the document and I will attach it to the email that I'm sending you this video with, okay? But as you know, it's always right there in the course for you to use. So, what do you think? Who's more rational? Men or women? I ask this because this is exactly what our argument this entire week is all about. Remember, we're focusing on the Enlightenment era. This is an image of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I don't speak French, but I'm assuming that's how you say it. And he wrote quite a bit about women in education. Now, this is actually from an article found online. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is considered one of the key Enlightenment philosophers. He lived from 1712 to 1778 and was a major influence on the intellectual thinking of the 18th century, both on those who agreed with his ideas and those who argued against them. He inspired many people behind the French Revolution, and he influenced Kant's view of ethics, rooting ethics in human nature. Now, he's from France, and I believe that actually is going to be one of the questions that comes up on your quiz. So, he inspired people in the French Revolution, and he was definitely French. Okay, so this is the same article that we found online, continued on this slide. And he actually wrote a book called Emile. It was about a boy and how you should educate young men. His Emile was a major influence on thinking about education, and The Social Contract, which is this book, was an influence on the thinking about political life and political organization. His central idea has been summarized as, man is good, but he has been corrupted by social institutions. Nature has created man happy and good, but society depraves him, that means turns him bad, corrupts him, and makes him miserable, he wrote. He was, especially in his early writing, concerned with equality among men and the reasons that such equality was not actualized. That means, you know, people have the idea that everyone is equal, but then how come we don't act it out, right? Which is exactly what we've got going on today, right? Okay, man, not woman. But while Rousseau is often credited with a view of human equality, the reality is that he did not include women fully into that sense of equality. Women were, for Rousseau, weaker and less rational than men, and they must depend on men. Men, for Rousseau, desire women but do not need them. This is going to be important on your quiz. Whoa. What did I just do? Okay. Yeah. Men want women but they don't need them. And women, he wrote, both desire men and need them. His main work that deals with women and makes clear that his statements about man and men in other works likely are not meant to apply to women is Emile, where he writes about the difference between what he believes women and men need in education. Since the main purpose in life to Rousseau is for a woman to be a wife and mother, her educational needs are very different. They differ significantly from the educational needs of young men. And here, so depravity means to corrupt. Constituted means like to make a law. Scruples are things that you can get very warped out about. You know, if you're like nitpicking every single thing in your conscience that you did or you didn't do, or think this is good or that is bad, that's what being scrupulous means. To usurp is to get rid of a king. I think we've already had that word. To cultivate means to develop someone, to raise your child, to cultivate their tastes. He mentions shrewd women. That means intelligent women, people who are smarticle particle. Okay. So this is the first quote from Rousseau on women and women's education. Once it is demonstrated that man and women are not and should not be constituted the same or developed the same, either in character or in temperament, it follows that they should not have the same education. In following the directions of nature, they must act together, but they should not do the same things. Their duties have a common end, but the duties themselves are different, and consequently, also the tastes that direct them. After having tried to form the natural man, that's what he'd been writing about before, let us also see, in order not to leave our work incomplete, how the woman is to be formed who suits the man. Okay, so he's basically saying that the man and the woman live together to have a family, right? And they're not the same. And they shouldn't be the same. They shouldn't have the same personalities. They shouldn't do, which is, makes sense. It goes, and because they don't have the same duties, they shouldn't have the same education, right? So the duties that they have as part of a family is to raise the children, take care of the home, and those kinds of things, right? But the woman is supposed to what? Take care of the house, take care of the kids, take care of the budget for the family. And the man is supposed to do what? Reason, work, run the business, whatever things that men are supposed to do. So now he is going to tell us how he thinks women should be formed. Okay, so heads up, a quiz question that you might want to be aware of is that really what he's saying is that the way we educate young girls to become women is not the same way that we should educate young men. Okay. Now the second quote, he says, on the good constitution of mothers depends primarily that of the children. So in other words, children are completely dependent on how good the mom is. On the care of women depends the early education of men. Okay, so when they're little, the women are in charge of teaching them. And on women, again, depend their morals. So all children are going to get their morals, their passions, their tastes, their pleasures, and even their happiness is all going to come from how well their mom takes care of them. Thus, the whole education of women ought to be relative to men. In other words, it needs to be in relation to men. to please men, to be useful to them, to make themselves loved and honored by them. So in other words, women should please men and be raised to be useful to men, to make themselves loved and honored by the men in their lives, to educate their young sons, to care for them when they are grown up, to counsel them, and it's spelled differently, but I'm thinking that means to give good advice, to console them when they're sad, and to make life agreeable and sweet to men. These are the duties of women at all times, and that should be taught to them from their very infancy. Unless we, and he talks about society, unless we are guided by this principle, then we shall miss our aim, and all the precepts and laws we give to women will accomplish nothing. They will not be happy, and we will not be happy. Okay, so our third and last quote from Rousseau. No, it's not the third, last one. Hold on. On women and women's education. He says to give without scruples, without worrying about every single little bit. Give women a women's education to women. Be generous, in other words. See to it that they love the cares of their sex. See to it that they are well taken care of, and anything feminine or for specifically women that you provide. He's telling the other men to provide for the women in their lives. Make sure that they possess modesty, that they know how to grow old in their menage. That means like all the things that we have around us in our environments, and to keep busy in their house. So, make sure that we're modest, that women are modest, that we know how to take care of our homes, and keep busy. The fourth quote, to cultivate means to develop, to cultivate in women the qualities of the men, and to neglect those that are their own is then obviously to work to their detriment. In other words, if you try to give women the skills that men need, then it's going to be bad for the women. Shrewd women, intelligent, smart women, he says, see this too clearly to be duped by it. In trying to usurp our advantages, they do not abandon their own, but from this it comes to pass that, not being able to manage both properly on account of their incompatibility, they fall short of their own possibilities without attaining to ours, and thus lose half their value. Wait a minute. Okay, so he's saying to develop in women the qualities of men. If we teach our little girls how to do the things that men need to do, then we will neglect what they need, and that will hurt them. Intelligent women are not falling for this call that other people were making at the time to educate and teach the young girls how to read and write. He says, in trying to usurp our advantages. So basically he's saying that women who are calling for young girls to be educated are trying to usurp or trying to overthrow the men. And because they're trying to do that, they are abandoning their own lives even though they don't realize it. Not being able to manage both properly. He's saying you can't be a man and a woman at the same time. And then if they try that, then if women are all educated, then they're going to lose their value. And then he talks to the women directly, because before he's talking to the men. Believe me, judicious mother, intelligent mother, do not make a good man of your daughter as though to give the lie to nature, but make of her a good woman, and be assured that she will be worth more to herself and to us. Interesting. Okay. The next guy, his name is Charles Maurice de Talleyrand Perigord. So he lived a little bit later. And at France again, this man Talleyrand had been put in charge of coming up with a more quote-unquote Republican system of education, one that would educate more people, everybody. Consequently, he published a report on public instruction in which he recommended that French schools exclude girls who, in his opinion, very much like Rousseau's, the women needed to learn domestic skills at home. Here, Talleyrand followed Rousseau's line of thinking that women's nature was completely very different than men's nature and that they should therefore be educated differently and separately. Some of the words that come up: incontestable, meaning you can't argue with this. We cannot disagree because this is a proven fact. Aspire means to have hopes and dreams and wish for something. Strenuous is physically demanding, difficult, taking a lot of strength. Onerous is difficult and hard and not attractive. Nobody wants to do it. You know, it's just a nasty job. Sufficient means having enough. Sanctuary can be called a holy place, but it can also, because it comes from sanctus, but it also means a safe place, right? Talleyrand's ideas about women's place in society. That half of the human race is excluded by the other half from any participation in government, that they are native by birth but foreign by law in the very land where they were born, and that they are property owners yet have no direct influence or representation. All are political phenomena apparently impossible to explain on abstract principle. So in other words, all the women are excluded from government. They can't have any participation in government. They are French, they live in France, but they don't have any say in the law of France. They can be property owners, but they cannot say anything about that property. Only the men in the family can say anything about it. But he's saying, yeah, that's a difficult concept, but on another level of ideas, the question changes and may be easily resolved. The purpose of all these institutions, all the schools, must be the happiness of the greatest number. The majority rules. Everything that leads us farther from this purpose, from making the majority of us happy, is an error. Everything that brings us closer to the majority of people being happy brings us closer. Anything that brings us closer is a good thing. It's the truth. So, if the exclusion, keeping women away from public employments, decreed against women, leads to a greater sum of mutual happiness for the two sexes, then this becomes a law that all societies have been compelled to acknowledge and sanction. So basically, if we let women in, it would make the majority into education. And if we let women work in the government, if we let women have a say in the property that they own or in the laws of the land, then the majority of people will be upset and will not be happy. Therefore, it is a good and a right thing to keep those women out of public life, because they will be happier and we will be happier. Therefore, the majority rule. Any other ambition would be a reversal of our primary destinies, what we were meant to be. And it will never be in women's interest to change the assignment that they have received. No woman will ever benefit from not being exactly how we want her to be. If you're getting sick of my voice, just pause it. Take a break. Talleyrand's ideas about women's place in society. It seems to me incontestable that our common happiness, above all that of women, we're seeking women's happiness, it requires that they never hope or aspire to the exercise of political rights and functions. Here we must seek women's interests in the wishes of nature. Is it not apparent? Isn't it obvious that their delicate constitutions, women's delicate bodies, and their peaceful inclinations, our peaceful personalities, and the many duties of motherhood set them apart from strenuous, difficult habits and onerous duties, and summon those women to gentle occupations and the cares of the home? And is it not evident and clear that the great conserving principle of societies, which makes the division of powers a source of harmony, has been expressed and revealed by nature itself? Nature is telling us this is the way it's supposed to be when it divided the functions of the two sexes in so obviously distinct a manner. This is sufficient. This is good enough. We need not invoke principles that are inapplicable to the question. Let's not bring up other problems. Let us not make rivals of life's companions. Let's not make women our enemies. You must, he's talking to men, you must truly allow the persistence, the continuation of a union between man and woman that no interest, no rivalry can possibly undo. Understand that the good of all, everybody, society, it demands that you take care of your women. Now, I want to make it real clear to you so you don't get tricked on the quiz that neither one of these men were advocating for any sort of religious interpretation. Okay, there's no religion involved in this. This is purely, strictly a political, this is the way society should be. One more slide on Talleyrand. So here he's giving recommendations for this national system of education. Instruction must exist for all. Therefore, no one can be legally excluded from it. As for the object of instruction, it must be universal, the same for everyone, for only then is it truly a common good. Oh, it was like a common core back then. Let us bring up women not to aspire or dream to have advantages which the Constitution, the law, denies them, but let us bring up women to know and to appreciate those laws which it guarantees to them. Men are destined to live on the stage of the world. A public education suits them. It early places before their eyes all the scenes of life, only the proportions are different. The paternal, fatherly home is better for the education of women. They have less need to learn to deal with the interests of others than to accustom themselves to a calm and secluded life. Let all your instruction of your women then concentrate those women's education within the domestic sanctuary. Domestic meaning home, sanctuary, safe place. So all women should be educated at home where it's safe. No other environment suits modesty better or more prepares her for gentle habits or prepares more gentle habits for her. So there you go. That's the end. These were the goals. Hopefully you achieved them. There is a quiz, and there's also an exit ticket that I will, it's right here. I would have put it in the chat. You won't be able to grab it on this recording, but I will put it inside the email that I'm going to send this recording with. I hope that this was helpful. Okay, for the quiz, I want you to be real clear that both Rousseau and Talleyrand are referring to this idea of a law of nature. to support their position. It's not a religious law. It's not even a government law. It is a natural law in their mind. Okay. And that public education, where you go out into public, is going to be really just for men. And it's interesting, they didn't say only wealthy men. So I don't know what that was all about, if they educated the younger boys as well. Okay. And remember also that this whole idea of not messing with the social structure and not educating women is because what? It's in the interest of everybody in all of society. Okay. And that's what makes it right for the men to have all the political and legal rights and for the women to be excluded from that. Okay. And it's because in their minds, women's natures are very different. Okay. Good luck on your quiz. Hopefully I'll see you later this week.